Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Let me begin this edition of Cut the Clutter by thanking you for sending in ideas, suggestions, questions that we could answer. And as we had promised, we will do one Cut the Clutter every week based on these, which we did on Saturday. So please do send us questions, ideas for the next week. Please do tell me what is it that you would like me to declutter for you or to try and declutter for you this week. It will be most valuable. Having said that, let's talk about the big story today. The big story today is the first major conviction, that is the conviction of the first major Congress leader, political leader in the 1984 riots cases. In fact, riots is an understatement. 1984 killings cases took place today. He's been given the life imprisonment. Everybody is claiming credit. Aam Aadmi Party is saying they set up an SIT, so they get the credit. Modi government says they set up an SIT, so we'll try and declutter that for you. But more importantly, what were these 84 riots? These riots took place, or these killings took place at a time when we did not have live TV coverage. Remember, there was no private sector independent TV or radio in India in 1984. All there was print media. Now, I can speak as an eyewitness because I covered those riots as a reporter. Remember, it was 35 years back. In fact, we were expecting our second child at that point. He'll be 34 next year. So it was that far back. But what was the picture like in Delhi? I was caught on the wrong foot, literally. In fact, I was in New York on my first visit overseas, and on the way back in mid-air when the assassination took place. So as we landed in Delhi and came out of the plane, you could see columns of smoke rising from various parts of the city, and some Air India employee said to me that Indira Gandhi had been assassinated. He was a Sikh employee and he was very worried because already attacks on Sikhs had started. On the way home, we found columns of smoke. By next day, I was out on my motorbike covering the riots. Now, these were very strange riots because nobody was fighting anybody. They were just groups of people going to people's homes, various localities, streets, finding Sikhs and killing them in many parts of the city in the most brutal manner. In Trilokpuri, I remember, I think it was called Block 32, I found several bodies still burning. And survivors told us that the attackers were following the old South African necklacing method. That is effectively catch a guy, put a tire around his neck, or in this case just throw kerosene on the body and show a torch to it. I found one decapitated body. And then there were bodies all over. Never in very large groups, not like I might have seen a year earlier at Nelly in Assam, but lots of bodies, lots of rioting. Now, a few things stood out in those 4 days or 3.5 days. One, everything was accompanied with looting. Second, there were no religious slogans. In fact, there is a lot of talk of Khoon ka badla, Khoon and all that. It wasn't that much. These were much more clinical, cold-blooded, planned, but methodical attacks. Next, there was no interference, quote unquote, by the police anywhere. Even when we found the police sitting here and there, they found some excuse or the other. In fact, one very senior police officer, Neeraj Kumar, was then quoted as having said in the police headquarters that he was on leave and he had just come by as a guest artist to be in the control room. Later, he denied this. So, Delhi police looked completely the other way, and strangely, of a police force of 66,000, 13%, 20% were Sikhs. Of the 66 SHOs in Delhi, station house officers, 13 were Sikhs. Of the 21 ACPs in Delhi, 4 were Sikhs. But you know where they were? They were indoors because they were afraid of coming out, and they had been told by their seniors not to come out. So, in most places, this was like a license to mobs to go and do what they wanted. This was 3 days of khuli chutti or furlough. The other peculiar thing was there were no big mobs. There were never thousands of people, hundreds of people, frenzied crowds. These were small bands of thugs who were going with crowbars, hockey sticks, in some cases knives, the odd sword, but nothing else. But really going and setting upon a Sikh shop, a Sikh home. If you know South Delhi a little bit, there is a Chirag Delhi corner along Outer Ring Road, where there used to be a beautiful old house owned by a Sikh family. That house was on fire. In Friends Colony East, the houses of two former chairmen of Punjab and Sindh Bank, Bhai Mohinder Singh and Bhai Inderjeet Singh, they had been set on fire. Khushwant Singh, the famous editor and writer, he had to take refuge in a Scandinavian embassy because they came to his home. The first man to see this rioting and anger was actually then President Gyani Zail Singh, because he had gone to visit Mrs. Gandhi in her All-India Institute of Medical Sciences, or to see Mrs. Gandhi's body, because she died there. And as his convoy was coming out, that was attacked by crowds shouting slogans. In fact, his own personal security officer, who was a Sikh, removed his turban to hide his identity, and his press officer or his media officer, who is a very popular man called Trilochan Singh, you often see him now, he was later chairman of Minorities Commission also, he plucked out a cushion from the car to save himself from lathi blows from outside. So this was just a very widespread phenomenon. This was not as if big waves of people were coming and were uncontrollable. Every mob, every group of attackers was controllable. And wherever the police tried to control them, they were controlled. I do remember, I've talked about policemen who did nothing. I should also talk about policemen who did something. Neeraj Kumar, who later joined the CBI and became famous because he also led the probe against betting in cricket and became then the head of anti-corruption unit of BCCI. I found him, then a young police officer, in Sadar Bazaar with a pistol chasing some rioters into houses and shooing them away, and also firing in the air. I didn't see him fire at somebody. So this was a totally preventable set of killings for 3 days. It consumed more than 3,500 lives. Now a few things stand out. One, were the congressmen involved? If I won't lie and say that I saw a congressman, a prominent Congress leader at the head of a mob saying "Maro, Maro, Maro," but yes, I do remember a senior Congress leader in Delhi called Dharamdas Shastri in the police station in Karol Bagh. He had come in basically to get some of his workers, quote unquote workers, who had been caught rioting and killing, etc. and looting. He came to get them released. And when the policeman said that they were caught looting and rioting, he said, "ठीक है, लूटा ही तो है ना, crime थोड़ा है, जो लूटा है वो सामान रख लो, इनको अब जाने दो." There was another one called Brahm Yadav, who I found in village Kodapur, again on the outskirts of Delhi, who was again fighting with a joint patrol of police and the army. By this time the army had come, and what was his complaint? He was saying, how can an army patrol that is led by a Sikh officer be expected to be fair? So there were many such examples. So to say that the Congress was involved, yes, the Congress was involved. The other interesting thing, which is a positive thing, is that there were very few cases of neighbors attacking neighbors. So this wasn't like the partition of 1947, where neighbor turned on the neighbor. In fact, in many of Delhi's colonies, including where we lived in Saket those days, people formed vigilantes at night to protect the Sikhs in their colonies. And many of us went out at night wearing thick jackets. It was cold already, thick jackets and our two-wheeler helmets, and carrying hockey sticks, bats, anything we could find, not to attack our Sikh neighbors, but to protect our Sikh neighbors. So there was this side to that phenomenon as well. Now, what is the big regret about those riots? The big regret is that all those lives could have been saved. Most of those lives could have been saved if the police had acted in time, or if the army had been called out in time. And what happened when the army was called out? When the army was called out, the army hardly had to fire at anybody. People saw the army and they melted away because these were thugs. They had no intention of fighting anybody. So once they knew that there was a uniformed force that meant business, they quietly disappeared. So the regret is, if the army had been called out earlier, maybe most lives, definitely most lives would have been saved. Having said that, once these killings took place, what did India do? What did the state of India do? There was a lot of complicity, delays, but those came later. Initially, it is the terrorists who took over what they call the task of revenge. So assassinations were carried out in Delhi. A prominent Congress leader, Lalit Makan, who was a minister, he was assassinated with his wife, Gitanjali, and a couple of his friends who had come to visit him. By the way, his nephew, Ajay Makan, is now a senior Congress leader in Delhi. He heads the Congress in Delhi. Dharamdas Shastri, who had many cases filed against him but kept on getting away, finally died a natural death, as did H.K.L. Bhagat, but also Arjun Das, who was Sanjay Gandhi's former motor mechanic and who had earlier been somehow caught up in the Turkman Gate demolitions. He was assassinated too. And people like Jagdish Titler, Sajjan Kumar, they have been targets of assassination squads since then. Now, of these people, only one has got properly convicted in a trial now, that is Sajjan Kumar. Sajjan Kumar also, like the others in this group, were Sanjay Gandhi's people. They had been brought up by Sanjay Gandhi. They were his proteges. Now, everybody is claiming credit for his conviction today. As I said earlier, AAP is saying we set up an SIT, so this happened. BJP is saying we set up an SIT, so this happened. Both are wrong. This is a 2005 case. There were two Nanavati commissions looking into 1984 killings in Delhi. The first commission was good for nothing. The second commission was a bit more conclusive. And the second commission said that all the cases against various people should now be clubbed and should be investigated again. And CBI investigated those cases. So in 2005, a fresh FIR was registered against Sajjan Kumar. In that trial, the trial court acquitted him. After the trial court acquitted him, CBI went and filed an appeal in the High Court. It is that appeal in the 2005 case following the second Nanavati commission, where Sajjan Kumar was acquitted in the trial court, that now he has been convicted again by a higher court, by the High Court of Delhi, by Justice Muralidhar. So this is a sense of justice after a very long time. One prominent congressman has been convicted, sent to jail for life. Now, should it have taken 3.5 decades? Most certainly not. Should more people have been punished? Most certainly. But some of these people been assassinated? Certainly not. But this was a spiral of violence. Fortunately, in Punjab, it is over. But a grievance remains that perpetrators of 84 did not get punished. So I think Sajjan Kumar's conviction and sentencing now will provide some sense of closure to many Sikhs in Delhi and elsewhere. And I do hope that other cases also are similarly pursued. And sometimes we say wheels of justice turn slowly, but as long as they turn and people find justice, you can live with it. To that extent, this is a welcome development and a sense of closure.